Testing. Okay, we're recording. Alright, Military Standardization Handbook, Petroleum Operation Military Handbook 201B, Department of Defense. Chapter 6, Section 3, Tanker Farm Maintenance. Alright, General. Section outlining the broad requirements involved with the maintenance of the tanker farm maintenance schedule. The maintenance schedules are prescribed by the military. So for the publication should be prepared with minimized possibility of the equipment. The maximum effectiveness schedule will be geared for a local operational procedure that provide the full utilization available to the personnel due during slack operation time periods. Past operational data anticipated with the maintenance requirements of the power prove useful for the development of the such skills. Machinery history, equipment and maintenance of the road shall be established for a major piece of the equipment. Of the record should be prepared with the data, with the also guide with the future for the maintenance plan. Equipment manuals will include with the information regarding the facility provided at the oil depot, as such as map, specification, manufacturer, operator, instruction, as is one of the most important records to be secured by the capital of the superintendent. It is suggested for the maintenance of the record, each important with the record periodic inspection, maintenance for the test, and is be listed with the card file with a loose leaf binder, a simple form that will show the chronological order pertaining to the information regarding with the inspection, testing, with adjusting of the repairs, replacement parts. Should suffice. These cars should be prepared with not only with the pump, but the valve, the compressor for the engine, motors, heaters, and filters separated with the other equipment pertaining to the planning operation for the car system. It is too elaborate with it become with the burden. Some of the if it is simple, with the accurately kept, it will agree. It will be of great value to ensure the inspection made with the superintendent that may supplement with a card file, with a tickler, with a calendar file, with it should be referred to regularly some designated time. Periodic overhaul and inspection. Machinery equipment is assembled for the inspection overhaul with the use of the period based on either patch of the time of the gallon handling operating hour of the established for the use of the period of the maintenance force should be guided with the technical publication bulletin with the service and concern with the manufacturer of the maintenance guidance. Tank maintenance. Tank grades, gravel. The equivalent aggregated with the base of the tank grade should be maintained at the bottom of the tank with a higher than general grade with the adjacent natural and established ground level. The tank bottom with the ground with above with 12 inches higher than the ground level, especially locations subject to heavy rain with the frozen surface of the soil having the high runoff of the grade surface should be sloped with gradually downward away from the elevation with the edge of the bottom of the sheet. To meet the yard and tanker farm grade with the shoulders of the form should be surfaced with the crushed rock with a similar material with the penetrated with the asphalt with the variable with the allow adequate drain with the surface of the water away from the tank bottom of the drainage ditch system will reduce the erosion of the tank base of the corrosion of the underside of the tank bottom shoulders. Bordering bases should be gray with the leaf of the protruding edge of the tank bottom sheet with the bottom angle with the only visible at all times with no low spots with the all collection with the water against steel with the wind bases set element away from the tank bottom of the material should be added with the back of the tank bottom with the steps should be being taken filled with the void immediately with the prevent further undermining of the bottom of the tank. Some of the older tanks at military bases may be found with the rest on the concrete slab that provide usually with the distributed load on more evenly. Even having a curb extended upward several inches above the tank bottom and elevation of the curb, in many cases amidst the retained with the water between the tank and the curb, the causing the tank of the bottom is rough. In such cases, curbing should be removed of the drainage shots cut in the curb with a permit with a release of the water. The steel head was bind with and the removed portion should be painted with where the curb close the tank with the shell with allowed with the remaining space between the curb and the tank shall be filled with the asphalt with the other suitable material properly caulked. Alright, tank painting. Paints for the tank intervals to detail the location conditions necessary for the important general appearance for the preservation of steel, for the reduction of evaporation loss of light colors permitted with the camouflage regulation of the portion of the shell at the bottom of the particular near. The juncture should examine the evidence of the excessive corrosion. The tank should be painted in corns. With standard applicable military color specification, tank top, particularly where the tanks are used for the storage follow products, should be painted preferably with very light with the color with the help reduce loss with the evaporation. And it's sometimes necessary for the special corrosion preventive paints of the bottom of the junctures, especially they exposed to excessive dampness, salty atmosphere. Interior of the coding guidelines for the tank military installation are cited with the DoD technical manual entire interior coating system with the surface of the contact with the petroleum fuels. Water bottom tank for the military establishment should not carry with the water bottom. However, with the tank at the bottom with now of a leak with a suspected leaking, the water bottom should be used only with a long time and necessary for the remove of the tank product of the emergency basis for the bank of the regular required inspection repair with the tank bottom should be of the course be as made with as soon as conventional as possible. Your tank roof leaks. When the tanks are cleaned with the repair with the other region of the interior of the entire interior of it should be inspected with the vertical tank with include with the roof tank with the underside of the roof with the internal valves, swing lines and swing line cables as well with the tank shell at the bottom of the plate with the roof of the tank leaks if it should be sealed. Large leak of the roof of the steel tank should be caulked by first inserting with the oakum and with the packing with the before applying with the caulking compound. Some riveted tanks may not be tight at junction with the roof and shell. When the tank of the volatile product surface is impossible to stop the vapor leak, the tank should be taken over the such surface if the roof of the gasoline jet fuel tank is suspected of leaking. It may be tested applying soap suds for seam to the seams joints or timing with the pressure made inside of the tank of the building up due to the thermal expansion where the product is pumped in the tanks. Alright, tank ladders and stairways, handrails, platforms, catwalks, and unsafe if they repaired and strengthened or repaired or strengthened immediately with a practical ladder with a perpendicular with the position should be chained with its slope with not less than 2 feet with a 12-foot horizontal, 12-foot vertical ladders. Have excessive sway should be adequate brace for the tank ground with the tank mount with a concrete slab with the grave should be ground with the bottom with the beam for the driving ground rod ground wire connected with the tank shell with the brazing above the ground storage tank with a direct contact with the ground need to be grounded, not to be grounded. Concrete tanks inspect with the base for the roof seal with the concrete tank with the leaks of the never permit product to touch the underside of the roof. Tank linings carefully should be exercised with the entire of the line to avoid damage of the lining. Alright, 6.6 tank fittings. Tanks not equipped with a floating roof with a design with a gasoline with a jet fuel surface normally erected with the pressure vacuum type of the vents for the storage tank of the fuel oil surface where it's supplied for free vents. Vents of the vents for the taking have been working with the pressure exceeding 2 psi with the will require the frequent attention should be checked only with the personnel with the familiar with the operation pressure vacuum of the vents for the operating under the high pressure for the in the case of the vents are provided with the screens. The screen should be cleaned and then replaced for the first time with the corrosion of the clogging of the safe operation for the necessary for the moving parts where they work smoothly to ensure continued smooth operation with the steam type pallets. Pallets are used with the stem type pallets are used with the stems may be cleaned with the clear seam with the parts of the cannot if the parts cannot be readily cleaned by the above method the mild liquid metal polish will be found effective but all the compounds removed with the cleaning part before replacing the backing of the surface pressure of the vacuum illustrated figure 2 with the representative of the type of the normally used with the military oil storage activities. However, any other type will consist basically with the same moving part of the air over the subject of the same cleaning method. It is important for the weight of the pallets to be adjusted with the permit the tank for the vents to operate with the pressure recommended for the tanks which are installed. Flame arrestor. The flame arresters have been provided with a bank for the elements generally made with a corrugated with a metal sheet. These should be kept free of the dust from loose deposits or for other foreign material. The cleaning of the flame and the rest of the loose material matter is lodged between the corrugated sheet. The bank should be blown out with a dry compressed air with the inspection covered with the air should be closed with the and firmly and tightened. Remove the flame arrestor elements where the temperature is extremely low. There is the damage of the condensate freezing with the necessary for the operating person will be fully informed. Become familiar with the operating of the vacuum vents of the flame arrestor, paying with particular attention for the cold boil with the precautions, pressure and vacuum vent valve settings. The small vertical tank not over the 10.5 to 11 foot with the diameter can be operated 1 pound pressure if in good condition. Large vertical cone roof is usually operated with the pressure not exceeding 1.5 ounce. The pressure vacuum, the valve on cone roof, the vertical tank for the small horizontal tank usually set to relieve the 1/2 ounce pressure of vacuum. In addition to the atmosphere type of the tank, there are pressure tanks such as Slipheroid, Hemisphere, etc. Operated pressure up to 2.5 psi with the vacuum setting at up to 2 ounces. Regardless of the type of the tank, military tank manuals manufacturer specifications should be checked to determine the safe operation pressure. If information is not available, it should be obtained with the responsible military service. The recommended limited with the maximum pressure of the vacuum setting at 1/2 ounce. Establish such a time the divine information regarding the question can be secured. It's important to vent an adequate side with the excessive pressure due to the fast of the filling rate with the may cause the damage to the tank roof. If equal important vacuum side over the pressure of the vacuum vent with the operating of the properly with the adequate side with the order to prevent the collapsing of the tank during its issue from the product. Alright, gauge hatch cover. The gauge hatch cover in the gasoline tank that should be kept very tight when they accept with the entrance, with the need, with the weight, with the cover alone, when it becomes too cumbersome for the tank. Operating over the 1/2 ounce vapor pressure for the tone of the gauge covers with the various fuel tank, with the equipped with the thumb screw, with the wing nut, with the permit, with the keeping over the fastened tightly when the tanks are not to be gauged with the threads of the bolts with the stabs stripped and painted over for the some of the other region that cannot be properly tightened. The defect of the should be remedied with the securely with the fastening of the cover that cannot be made with the vapor type, but it should be replaced with the type of the cover can be provided with the means of locking with the required if so ordered. Some gauge hatches are equipped with spring hinge and gaskets. If the spring is not working properly, does not keep the cover tight with it should be replaced with the other hatch cover that is equipped with the gaskets only, which should be checked to make sure that the gasket is providing proper seal. If not, the gasket should be properly replaced. If the volatile fuel tanks are equipped with gaskets only, they should be checked to make sure that the gasket is providing proper seal. If not, the gasket should be properly replaced. If the volatile fuel tanks are equipped with the gauge hatches and screwed cap, they should be replaced with the manufacturer approved gauge hatch. If found with the screw caps are rarely, if ever, kept tight with the gauge hatches. Volatile fuel tanks can neither be kept vapor tight nor repaired with the kept vapor tight, especially those that do not be beveled edge of the gaskets should also be properly replaced. Alright, your foam chamber. If the foam chamber, the connections over the not vapor type that should be made with the type with the open the foam chamber to inspect the diaphragm with a crack for the broken should be replaced. Swinging line assembly. If used when swinging line assembly with it may have discontinued with the mechanism, top tank should be removed and openings due to the removal should be permanently sealed so that no vapors can escape. Automatic gauges, automatic ground level. The rating of the tank should be maintained with the corners of the manufacturer instruction connection. But the tank should be kept very tight with especially use of the tanks storing gasoline, jet fuels, and similar products. Gauges should be made properly adjusted with the making automatic reading. Agree with the average several hands of the gauge of the tank in the ideal condition. Original setting with the automatic readings should be checked with against those hand readings in regular intervals to make sure that they are agreeing with the M-type gauge with the regular use of the oil seal that should be maintained. The M-type gauges which are not used shall be removed and all openings caused with the removal permanently sealed. Alright, valves. Cast iron, semi-steel, brass mount with the tank valves should be replaced with steel valves when the tank can be conventionally emptied. Draw off the valve. The leaking of the water draw off valves should be replaced with the tank storage level to operating conditions. Safety permit with the brass and brass mounted water draw off valves should be protected with exposure to the ground, spill fires, breaking, freezing. They should not be blanked off. Alright, 6.7, the conservation type of the storage tank. These several types of the conservation type storage tanks are found with the military installation. Most common over the floating roof, with the cone roof, and the internal floating pan tanks. Conventional floating roof tanks. The floating roof tank of the principle described in Chapter 4 of the success of the floating roof tanks depend largely on the seal between the floating roof and the shell. The roof is not absolutely level. The sticking necessary repairs should be made. Weather precautions, maintenance of the floating roof, the tanks of the usual painting with the inspection, particularly with the negligible, with the temperatures above freezing, with the collection, with the disposal of the rim and the snow of the floating roof of the present, with some of the difficulties which are the troublesome and are subject to the very low temperature of the heavy snowfall during the summer months of the roof of the required with the only routine attention because of the rainwater drain and from the roof from the flexible drain line allowed with the pass through the product with the drain from the tank with the bottom. When the water is allowed to pass from the product with the means of an opening drain, ample time must be allowed for the water itself to the product, then it must be drained from the tank bottom to regular specified terminal intervals, especially before the tank is open for issue with where long period with extremely cold is not usually encountered with some of the tank farm operators allow snow and ice to collect with the floating roof. During the period they can be collected, the water must be drained off. When the long period extreme cold with the encounter with the causing of the temperature for the product to drop to below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, some of the tank tank farms, draining of the water of the tank of the farm, or remove a roof during the winter months by closing off the regular roof drain. Unless the irregular roof drain is water type, may be accumulate withdrawal offline with the temperature of the product tank below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. The accumulated water will freeze, rupture, drain the line, while the water drains directly through the product. The accumulation may form with the tank bottom in the form of the inverted icicles. In order to avoid excessive ice accumulation with the roof of the regular roof drains, maintained with a closed pot position. Some types of the reservoir of the pump and siphon the water over the tank shell with the forms of the ice. In case of the emergency drain, remain open and operable to relieve excessive water loads due to unprotected heavy rainfall. The water draw off of the valve at the lower end of the flexible water draw off line should not be blank, otherwise plugged, but remain in operational condition. Periodically open with the guard against the water accumulation of the line. Snow should be removed from the roof properly after each of the storm. Or snow removal the further with the complicated with the tank if it's only partially filled. It is advisable through the pump with the one tank or the other, the raised floating roof at the highest position to then facilitate snow removal. In southern climate, the essential for the efficient personnel available to dispose of the heavy snow load. When it is not practically complete with the remove of the snow from the roof of the property after the storm, the drifted snows must be leveled to cover the possibility of the tilting of the roof. Accumulation of the snow over the water of the floating of the roof must be taken into account with the gauging of the tank during the freezing spell. Checks in frequent intervals and ensure that the roof seals are not frozen with the tank of the roof must not be hung on floating, not floating on the product. Whether there any possibility of the snow and ice accumulation on the roof, unless adequately shoring is provided to prevent collapse of the roof structure between the imposed load. Consult the installation engineer with the responsible maintenance agency for the specific instruction. Primary, secondary sealed material are in good condition. They should be replaced with the paint with the recommended with the manufacturer. The rim vents should not be permitted to become clogged. Screen if dry should be cleaned with the corroded. It should be replaced with the cap of the manhole cover, the type of the bolt of the minimize the evaporation law of the seals of the floating roof with the compensate with the responsible variation tank diameter out of the roundness of the shell. However, the sealing of the mechanism that stick of the pole away from the shell and the tank is too much out of round. Such conditions seriously impair the efficiency of the roof and should be corrected by leveling the tank. Ladder and ladder wheels must be free of the moving freely. There is an indication of sticking the wheels and moving joints should be lubricated with vertical guide gasket does not fit snugly. Production and evaporation creep for the condition should be corrected to check the moving parts and cables and sheaves. Automatic gauges keep roof free of debris. Keep all parts lubricated. Surface is necessary. Check platoon interior of the deck manheads for corrosion and leakage. Alright, precaution against high winds. The floating of the roof tanks exposed with the subject of the hurricane conditions, high winds, heavy rainfall, and important advance action to be taken to prevent roof damage of the loss of the product and impose the excessive water loads under these conditions, particularly when the floating of the tanks are fully or nearly with the causing with the ill ring of the extended above the otherwise contact with the top angle of the tank shell. Imperative for floating. The following precautions must be taken on the bottom of the water presently, especially with a floating roof tank equipped with a siphon drain with an open drain off of the water lowest practical limit. The advanced drainage not only conforms to the best operating practices will be minimized with the time required with the drain mounting with the bottom of the water with the drain the heavy rainfall. But in order to minimize the damage of the wind damage of the wind floating roof is the maximum or near maximum floating height. The lower the roof of the transfer product to another tank of the similar product. Serve the eulogists permit. Inspect the roof of the assertion for the drains operable with the emergency drain openings. Also with the sign of the qualified personnel with the drain water of the roof and the roof tank bottom as necessary to prevent roof damage and product loss during the periods of the high winds, excessive rainfall. Alright, cone roof tanks and internal floating pans. The weather that is prescribed with the conventional floating roof tank are not applicable to the internal floating pan and tanks. Therefore, the disposal of the rain and snow of the floating pan does not present operational maintenance for difficulties. However, in cold climate, screens installed with the shell vents for the internal floating with the pan tank may be clogged with the snow in order to provide proper ventilating above the floating pan roof. The screen should be inspected and cleaned necessary for the internal floating of the pan roof. Is stiffened rim outer edge of a single deck The rim space is normally 5 inches of clove with a continuously resilient type of the fabric seal with each column supporting the fixed roof. Provided with a column seal with all each of the tanks the subject of the wear should be inspected at regular intervals to assure that the seals are in operating condition. Malfunction seals can cause pan and hang, resulting in possible damage. Improper condition operation of the pan can also result in improper the pan equipped with adjusting support with these not set and with the same height. With any extreme care should be taken to ensure the pan supports that same height. Alright, 6-8, tank cleaning. See Military Standard 457, the frequency inspection of tank inspection, cleaning, petroleum, fuel, operation, storage tank. 6-9, building yard maintenance, and then the Alright, building maintenance. Building maintenance, if any of the portion of the building's loading platforms are not structurally safe and made with the repairs, immediate repairs should be made with the following. It should be included with the maintenance checklist. The leaking walls of the roof that should be repaired generally with the warehouse floors are designed to give it allowable working load expressed in pounds per square foot, but no sign now exists. The loading capacity of the floor should be determined with the warning sign of the post. If the floor overload with the material stored should be distributed. Loading will come from the design limit of the operation of the door, the windows, and faulty with the condition should be remedied. The buildings considered should be repainted with the conditions warrant. Or check all fire extinguisher for the electrical fixtures, outlets, and the safety automatic controls. Yard maintenance. The following items related to the yards are require frequent inspection. General appearance of the plant is very important feature of the cluttered yard, generally indicate the poor negligent operation and materials of equipment that cannot be stored indoors because of the inadequate space has to be stored outdoors. Should be arranged so as neatly as possible to protect them from the weather and physical injury. No case should be equipment that is stored with the driveway where it presents a hazard. In order to avoid sloppy driveway condition of the yard should be drained properly with a drainage ditch and dikes, culverts, and should be kept clear with the soil erosion should be arrested with the road erosion. Roads and erosion should be arrested with the roads. Shall be kept graded with the pavement with the repair with the keep of the fire hydrants should be kept with the clear with the weeds with the other obstruction. Road signs should be provided with the required safety. Speed limits should be determined and posted. Pits should be kept clean with the drain with the main folds exposed with the pipeline should be identified according to the color code. Fences and gates around the depots in good condition. Alright, 610, pump maintenance. In order to get the best performance of the equipment with the minimum of the repair pump that associated with it should be operated within accordance with the operational instructions applied with the manufacturer consistent with the necessary maintenance of the repairs to pump to develop, depending on large measure of the care given them with the pump during acceptance and test, and easy operating all units of the must keep it properly lubricated with a good adjustment, and some of the more specific items can affect with the operation of the pumps, which should be carefully with the check before the making of the mechanical adjusting of the pump itself, are pump piping. Periodically check the condition of the suction of the discharge of piping with the check cleaning with the inspect with the string with the indication of the mesh of the breakers, scale with the other deposit of the piping on strainer screen with which increase with the hinge friction, decrease with the pumping rate with the inspection of the bypass with the checking valves once of the failure with the results of the serious damage with the pump from surge shock pressures. Pump leaks. If the pump leaks, make sure the proper type of the packing lubricant is used. If the leak persists, then that mechanical seal should be replaced and installed. Alignment of the pump and the driver should be checked periodically. The misalignment will cause vibration in the pump and also driving the unit also with excessive bearing and packing wear often should shaft breakage. Pump grounding. If the pump motors are grounded, the ground connection should be checked to make certain that they are in fact. If the pump motors are not grounded, grounding should be installed. Electrically. Any defects electrical circuit, particularly with those located near the pump's manifold, should be remedied with the overload with the protection devices should be checked to ensure that they are operating properly. The safety with the exposed moving parts of the on such gears revolving couplings and etc. should be shielded with a suitable guards to prevent possible accident to injury. Alright, your personnel performance. Pumps will usually apply with a test of the under very condition for the checking of the performance as well with a periodic inspection for several pumps at the pump house and provide with the same surface that should also be checked with each of the pump about the same amount of the duty of the line. Suction difficulties. Suction trouble with it include with the stoppage will often cause pump operation made with the difficulty with it necessary with the pump builds for the one set of the conditions not may be operated with under quite different conditions which such change of the usually occur with the due to the allowance must be made with the difference because of the vapor pressure for the product to be handled may cause vapor may cause suction Product to be handled that may cause suction difficulty with the temperature of the volatile product, such as gasoline elevation of the sea level that must be also taken into consideration to determine whether or not the suction lift under the existing conditions, whether the suction lift capacity of the pump is designed. Pump section difficulties may result with the air leak with the suction line with the stuffing of the box may also, due to tramp material, include the scale of the pipelines getting into the pump strainer, even within the pump. More time useless and effort spent in locating stoppages, diagnosing faulty equipment, or setting of the spring tension of the relief valves, etc., can be saved by using pressure and vacuum indication gauges. Pressure gauges should have the range of at least twice the normal discharge pressure of the pumps. Several vacuum gauges should be available with a positive displacement of the pumps installed with the connection with the gauges should be provided with the selection and discharge size of the pump. Provisions made to protect against the destructive surge vibrations or forces. Pump testing. Alright, pump testing. When normal use is well with the type of the transfer of the pump over the tank should periodically be tested operating again if the closure cut and closer discharge valve will no manually operated bypass valve will allow the product to circulate back into the tank. In case of low level of the tank inventory of the length of the suction, the lack of the bearing lubrication will be the result of the pump that should be determined by hand. A log should be maintained showing the dates from the time of the test run. And then I'm just checking, like, see how long this is. We're going to cut the tank tape there at page 611, repair overhauls and pumps.